Yay! Woo! We're live.
Great.
Take it away, Gabrielle.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. So my name is Gabrielle Mariella. I'm a equity member, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's discussion. And today we're talking about international artists and the resolutions that deal with international artists' rights. I already said my name. My pronouns are she, her, and I think that's it from me.
I'll get this party started. Hello, my name is Davon Williams. I am the host of The Receipts, which is having its final episode this Thursday. I am also proud to say that I am an international artist. I am a proud member of SAG-AFTRA, and I am also paying my dues at Actors Equity Association.
I'm Robert Ariza. My pronouns are he, him, and I am an Eastern Chorus delegate.
Hi, my name is Ryan Morales. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm an Eastern Principal Delegate. And then I believe I'm going to read the mission statement code of conduct. The Transparency Coalition is a group of non-counselor delegates of Actors Equity Association dedicated to leadership and communication that is truly representative of our union's members. We're bringing the discussion of convention resolutions and amendments directly to members through a series of live discussions on Facebook and YouTube, allowing members to ask questions and express their support or concerns in real time. Each discussion is moderated by a non-delegate union member who will serve as an important voice of the membership. We will always strive to foster an inclusive, respectful, safe, and brave space to discuss ideas and continue learning. Our values are collaboration, curiosity, and yes-anding of one another, proposed policy, and the questions and concerns of membership. We are committed to creating an environment that is rooted in respect so that we can productively create and sustain the brave, safe space to discuss complicated issues. We will always extend that respect to members watching, and we seek the same in return. What we ask is that both the members engaging in conversation with us and the delegates themselves hold these two agreements. Number one, speak from the I. Number two, confront confusion or discomfort with curious questions. And while we are happy to engage in constructive debate, we view harassment and discrimination as a clear threat to free expression and participant safety, and as such, they will not be tolerated. We ask that members who engage with us give us the grace to not always know or to get it wrong sometimes. Anytime we don't know the answer to a question, we recognize it as an opportunity to search for information or clarity. I don't know are three of the most powerful words there are, followed closely by, let me find out. We bring you this series of convention conversations not only to have meaningful dialogue with current and future members, but to learn more about ourselves, or to learn more ourselves about the important policies of our union and to enhance our ability to serve as trusted liaisons for our fellow union members.
Great. Okay. So let's get started. So the amendment that we're talking about is
sorry, actually before we get into the new ones, I want to give an update to anyone who watched the last conversation that we had. I discussed my constitutional amendment to reinstate the special membership meetings, and we were actually discussing how I hadn't received any feedback as of yet from the resolutions and constitutional amendments subcommittee. And I was curious if I was going to receive any feedback at all. And then last night at 11:50 p.m., as I was going to bed, I got an email stating that my constitutional amendment had been ruled out of order because the convention cannot amend the bylaws. They can amend the constitution, but not the bylaws. So those are two different parts of our codes, I guess, or I don't know what to call them as a whole. But so they asked me to consider rewriting it so that it is a resolution as opposed to a constitutional amendment, which makes it then advisory to council, as opposed to once passed, if it were a constitutional amendment, it would just go straight into the language of the Constitution.
So just to recap, you had to meet a threshold for a constitutional amendment, fight to get to that number, only for them, again, already had their legal review. They could have caught this a long time ago, only for them to throw that on you last night.
Well, to be fair, I didn't submit my proposal for legal review before I submitted it to the portal because it was a very last minute proposal. I think I wrote it I submitted it a couple days before the deadline. because it came to me. I was like, oh, this is something that I forgot that I should have taken care of. So I understand, I guess I just was not aware that convention was not allowed to amend the bylaws. Now we know that. But I did some digging into the Constitution and the bylaws last night, into the language of it, because I find that interesting that that the membership meetings, everything surrounding how the membership meetings are organized, are in the bylaws. And any mention of it in the Constitution says, "Oh, look to the bylaws for how to handle membership meetings." So I posed a question about whether or not it was out of order to reword my language to include it in the Constitution instead of the bylaws. But now I don't know if that's all right, because it still ends up affecting the bylaws. So it's a kind of a gray area, which I think is interesting to share, because I'm learning, so we can all learn from this experience too.
And the removal of the membership meetings, was that
special membership meetings?
Was that the thing that we all voted on? No. Like, remember last year or a year and a half ago, I'm pretending 2019 is last year, but that we all voted on something and there was it was like 20 pages. Was that something that was in there, or when was that removed?
I don't know exactly when it was removed. When I talked to the counselor that informed me about the existence of these meetings back in September, I didn't get that. He had just mentioned that it was recently removed. So I don't know what recent meant. I didn't go into that. But according to the language that I have just been informed of in the bylaws, it seems like council is the only body that can amend the bylaws. So it would have been up to them to remove it.
Okay. I have a question then, because what I have been told a number of times is that this got removed during the referendum vote that made the convention.
That's what that's what I had thought. If anyone watched the last episode, that's what we had kind of discussed. But now I'm confused. So I don't know.
I will say there's at least one added benefit to it, that it would be great to unilaterally do it as a convention, but at the very least, it could at least be updated, like we were talking about yesterday, to better reflect the virtual aspect and make it a little more updated, like policy for 2021, instead of reinstating the old policy for years and years ago. So there's like an added benefit to it, but now we're stuck with, well, hopefully council does it.
Exactly, which is why I asked that question about whether or not I can add language to the Constitution about special membership meetings, even though, according to the Constitution, any language is actually in the bylaws for membership meetings in general.
Mm.
It's kind of, it's like a sticky situation. So I'm waiting for their response. So I will update you again probably at some point in another conversation. And so we can table this for now and move on to the constitutional amendments that we are supposed to talk about today.
Great. And now I'm looking at the amendment and the resolution, and this one that we're supposed to talk about. I'm like, is there anything about the bylaws? Because
actually, yeah, because I was curious about that too. And the writers of this constitutional amendment seem to have been aware of that, because they made the parts of their proposal that was going to be added language to the constitutional amendment different from the parts that resolve that the convention advises council to do this and that in the bylaws.
Right. Okay. So the ones that we're discussing today, first is a constitutional amendment called A Plea for International Artists' Rights. And the background on this is that currently international artists face barriers to obtaining theatrical work in the USA. Many of these come with restrictions around visas and green cards, but current actors' equity policies go above and beyond our national policies in limiting the ability of international artists to join both equity and work equity contracts. Now, I found this as a member. I did not know about any of this until literally yesterday, full disclosure, and now I have read a lot on it, and I'm both interested and disturbed by it. But basically, what is in this amendment and in all the supporting materials, and also testimonies of actual members, suggests that yes, there are obviously things that our government has, right? Visas, green cards, and all of those regulations. But that equity is sort of arbitrarily putting limits and additional restrictions. And in this plea, a lot of the things that are being talked about is the actual, just the legality of, are these things even legal? So before we even get into like the moral and like xenophobic undertones of this, first I just want to talk about just purely on a legal standpoint. My question is, one, if the restrictions that equity puts for example, there's been a lot of language about specifically O1 visas, specifically O1B visas, which are essentially visas where if someone demonstrates that they have extraordinary ability in the arts, they're given this visa. It's typically a term of 3 years. Specifically, like a lot of these testimonies, members have said that equity has told them that they're not allowed to, for example, work in a production contract under that visa. So my question is, if there were to be a lawsuit, let's say, against Actors Equity because of this, there hasn't been, and I think we'll get to that. I think, in fact, there hasn't been a lawsuit, I think, isn't a surprise to me.
Is it okay if I jump in here really quick, Gabrielle?
Yeah,
there has been a lawsuit specifically about this. We can get into it later. This part of the thing that we're talking about was part of the Black Theater Matters bill. But what I do believe is that presenters matter. And the writer of this is an international artist that this directly affects. So she's the one bringing it forward, rightfully so. But in learning about this, there is a very important court case that has already set precedent.
Great. So my question is, if someone sues Actors Equity, even just brings a lawsuit against them, we pay for that, right? It comes out of our dues, yes?
Well, I guess technically, right, because they would probably use whatever counsel, COUNSEL, not counselor, to be involved in those legal proceedings, and our dues pay the staff, right? So
right. So then my question is, yes, I see in these additional materials that there are similar legal cases that are precedent for it. But my question is, if it is specifically an illegal practice, even just on the basis of that, regardless of anything else, it seems to me that this would be an extremely important resolution, even just purely based on the fact that if this is in fact illegal, or could even be maybe possibly interpreted as illegal, that it's something that should definitely not be occurring.
Right. It almost feels like we shouldn't even be debating it at convention. It should almost just automatically be passed.
Well, correct. And so then my question is, if it has been already brought up, was there a response by Equity defending the legality of that? I didn't see anything on that, but I'm curious if there has been.
Part of the issue is we got to get into what this is. This was created as a result of white supremacy. Surprise, spoiler alert, that's where we're going. I'm getting us there early. But when this first started, what happened is Actors Equity Association wanted to start a dues structure, which would be different. So if you were a member and you were at that time, predominantly it was white men, you paid one. And if you came from another country, you had to pay extra. And then when the NLRB, that's the National Labor Relations Board, cut in because someone said, this isn't right, it was ruled in the favor of the NLRB that this was discriminatory. So instead of Actors Equity going, you know what, let's not be racist, they said, no, if we let them in, they'll take our jobs. They will take our jobs. We got to protect our jobs, which if you translate that, we got to protect white mediocrity is what they were really saying. So in the protection of white mediocrity, they said, this is what we'll do. We'll say you have to have a green card. We're going to put these other rules on them. We'll use this outdated tax term so that they can be trapped by that. And we'll make sure that we can get them that way. And that's essentially how this happened. And yes, to Robert Ariza's point, today or yesterday or a year ago or 2 years ago, this could have been changed. If it's something that's illegal, it can be changed. But again, when it comes to legalities and fiduciary responsibility, I don't think it's to the law of this country or to its members. It's to the white supremacist structures. And this is one of those moments where this is very evident in the way that we conduct business. I don't think there should even be a vote on this. You are 100% correct. This is open and shut. And the reason that there hasn't been a law case about this is, one, Actors Equity has done a good job of not educating its members on what is good and what is not. And two, people are afraid. It's not like Actors Equity has been great about the way that they do business. People are afraid. And when you have actors who aren't making the money that they need, they're just getting by to survive. In their head, they're going, well, if I sue, I might get deported. I don't know. If I sue, I might not be able to get a job again. I don't know. If I sue, then I may never be able to get into this union, and then I don't get to feed my children. So yeah, there's a lot of complications here, but the one that isn't complicated is that something needs to get done. Because right now, this law is more oppressive than the immigration laws we had on the books under the 45th president of the United States. Let's think about that.
Well, and that's what, from reading, and I think I'm gonna read, I pulled out some of the specific testimonies, but what seems to be a theme is that the members obtain the visa themselves. It's not as if they are even requesting that the producer pay some kind of they're fronting the legal, they're doing this. They're saying, I've already obtained this, very hard to obtain legal.
And it is very expensive. It's a very expensive process.
And I think anybody even who's dealt with just unemployment this year understands what a headache it can be to even get someone on the phone. So I cannot even imagine it was probably, ridiculous. So even to obtain it and then say, hey, I have this, I can legally work. And then for Equity to have additional restrictions that also seem to not be, people kind of seem to get different answers where there was no explicit it wasn't written, but then all of a sudden, oh, you can't work under this specific visa very arbitrarily, but then given different answers. And when you see the correspondence back and forth, it's very clear that there's scare tactics being used. And yeah, if you're a young actor right out of school, you're not going to, if someone's telling you have to go do this, you're not going to say, oh, I'm going to sue you. So I think it's kind of, they're banking on kind of skating through that, because if they're dealing with someone who is a name, who is international, it's also very clear that they're willing to make exceptions for that person, but they're not willing to, in general, for just your average artist who, there's also weird restrictions on, it can't be an ensemble, it can't be a chorus contract, but we could make an exception for a principal, which I don't understand that and how that easy. They're like, we could make what does that mean? So that seems like the communication issue as well. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to personalize this story, I had the joy of working in the Philippines for a little bit. Came across Lea Salonga's group of people, and they tell an incredible story of Miss Saigon, in which I believe it's Ken Davenport. I know a producer goes to Actors Equity and they go, okay, I have these artists, they're international, I want to use them. Actors Equity hits back with, I'm sorry, but these stars aren't big enough. Lea Salonga is not big enough to carry anything. And they literally had to backdoor and negotiate to get Lea Salonga, the queen of the Philippines, with Regine and the rest of them, to do this show. And it's well documented. That's another one of those stories where it's like, you will go out of your way to stop the success of an immigrant just to protect mediocrity.
Well, and also I think because as I was reading it, part of my head was going, okay, from a business standpoint, if I'm a producer, because I think this is also an argument that probably Equity has used, if anyone has ever questioned it, is probably, it's the producers, they don't want to do XYZ and jump through hoops in order to hire someone else. So like from a business standpoint, sure. If you said to me, okay, if you want to hire this person, just came out of school, no credits, to be in your ensemble, you're going to have to pay 10 grand to get this person in when you could just hire somebody else for no 10 grand. But that's not the case. That's actually not what's happening. It's not that the producers have to go through some huge thing. It's actually the restrictions seem to be imposed by Equity. And so Equity seems to be creating the headache. But I think there's this kind of thing of like, it's the big bad producers who don't want to necessarily. Yes, I do want to bring up the additional stuff that Jessica, who wrote this, has given, which I think, it's a good time to write that. So there's one specific, hold on. There was one specific testimony, and the person's name has been redacted, but I think it's important. This one stuck out to me very specifically. It says, I have an O1 visa. I got the offer from the Broadway production of redacted in December 2018. The offer was for an ensemble track, and they told me my debut would be in January 2019. But then Equity said I could not be in the production because I'm not a US citizen or a green card holder. If it was for a principal role, they said they might be able to make an exception, but since it was for ensemble, it's against the rules. So I was not able to make my Broadway debut. And there's a million, reading the form, there's a million stories that all seem to go the same way. People that were led to lawyers that cost them $20,000 to then ultimately still not be able to work the production. Yeah, there's so many stories exactly like this that seem to say, some of them even, which I think this gets into the legality part, of people not even being able to audition because they were asked about their visa status. And for some reason, when they say, oh, I have the O1 visa, it's like, oh, you can't even audition. And Jess has put together plenty of places and plenty of laws, just like US laws, that say that that is discriminatory and is actually not even legal. So it kind of brings us back to the conversation of why is this even a debate? It seems like it's pretty cut and dry. But my other question is, why is it only, it seems to be specifically the O1 visa that Equity has an issue with. But it seems also very arbitrary. Like why if someone can leave,
well, it feels like this is where we start to get into the conversation about how these policies are xenophobic, which is, it's the fear. It's what we just experienced for 4 years that was on the undercurrent of everything everywhere. It's not just something that is a piece of, 45's America. It's a piece of all of our institutions, and Actors Equity has been around for how many decades? So it shouldn't be surprising that we've got vestiges of xenophobic hate, essentially, and fear that have influenced our policies of, if we allow people from other countries of other nationalities to come in, they're going to steal our jobs. And how often did we hear that on the news or on Facebook or all these places for the past 4 years? It shouldn't really be surprising that it's a part of our organization.
I'm just going to amplify Jessica Wu's comment. It's because of the language in the Constitution and bylaws.
I also think from reading here where it says it says it right in the Constitution, but it's clearly not being enforced, about Section 12, about non-discrimination, that nothing in the foregoing provision shall operate against eligibility for membership. And then it says national origin, also in Section 1, where it says classes of membership. And Jessica did put this in the plea that she wrote, saying that people probably don't even know that there's, different classes membership. I was not aware of that until reading it, that people who, even if you are able to successfully book a contract, book a show and get a contract, that your membership is frozen, and that you are, once the contract ends, you're not like an active member. You can't audition. You don't have access to the portal, but you can also not take non-union work. But you're also paying dues. So that to me is, I don't understand how that, right. It's like, we know why, but it's also, how is this being skirted around as anything aside from being explicitly discriminatory? And then it also seems like a lot of the people that are giving this information are also actually giving incorrect information, because then other people in the testimonies of members who actually gave their personal stories said that, oh, well, when I asked so-and-so, they told me this: you cannot audition, you can't be on a production contract with an O1 visa. And then someone else says, oh no, there's nothing, that's a myth that, you can't. But then it's like, okay, well, these people are being told 10 different things, and which I think is also a constant theme in equity, that there doesn't seem to be one person who knows the right answer. You're going to get 25 different answers. So my, I guess, question on this too is, when I read a lot of them too, it was mostly people directly out of school that are young, who didn't have, they were told basically, well, if you want to work, you're going to have to get a green card, which obviously is extremely difficult to obtain, particularly if you're an actor with 0 credits who just graduated from school, that's not an easy, just once you get your permanent, residence, once you get a green card, you can come back to, as if it's like it's just no problem. So I guess my question is, if equity is willing to make exceptions for celebrities, right? People on principal contracts that are big names to do this. Who is who makes that exception, and where is it written explicitly, or is it not written in any of the laws, in the Constitution, the bylaws, anywhere that says this person has the authority to make an exception about our what are they calling it? And also in Jessica's amendment to remove the language, what is it actually called? They said non-resident alien members. Who has the authority to make that exception? That's my question. Is there a person who gets to make that exception?
My guess is there is not any one specific body or person that makes that distinction, and that it is left kind of I don't know, gray in our language. Yeah, I don't know.
Part of the issue we're having here in what is it, season 1, episode 8, I had a lawyer join me for like an episode where we're doing law. We were trying to figure out all these things of like electioneering. We were able to uncover documents. We were able to get all this information. And the lawyer, and we had a judge on as well, and both of them said, part of the issue is your Constitution and bylaws are purposely general. They're purposely general so that they can leave such space for I'm trying not to curse. I think I did enough on like yesterday's episode for them just to play games. There's a lot of gameplay, and there's a lot of wiggle room. So I don't know what lawyer we hired. I don't know who got their hands on that bylaw and that Constitution, but they have gone out of their way to make things as general as possible so that, one, again, we don't ever really have the right information, and two, it keeps us uneducated, and two, it allows them to really cover their asses. They're looking to cover their asses.
Jessica says in the comments that Article 7 of the Constitution is supposedly at the discretion of the National Council, which, so it seems like, great, here's this law, and if for the right person we decide, we'll make an exception for you. But for everybody else, just in general, we tell them that it's not allowed. And also what I think is very interesting is that this is not being presented to many actors up front. There's plenty of testimonies. I'll read another one who says that they were cast as a swing for the last revival of West Side Story. And despite all the efforts the production made to negotiate with Equity would not let me join the show because there's a production contract rule that says a non-resident alien cannot work under a chorus contract. And the offer was actually taken away. So yeah, and Jessica, who again is the writer of this, says individuals can plead their case, but it rarely makes its way to counsel. I'm sure of that. Which again, I wonder if Equity is also, again, this rule that it can only be a principal contract on a production contract. But again, no one seems to be able to point to that explicit rule. So where?
Can I give some context that makes this not better but worse? If we talk about the difference between a production contract and a chorus contract on Broadway, chorus contracts come with a lot of protections. It's very difficult to fire a chorus contract on Broadway as long as the show's still running. So if you think about, and principal contracts are up for renewal usually every year or whatever the terms are. So allowing an international artist on a production contract for a principal is fine because it's limited, and it's fine because it doesn't give them consistent employment, but actually preventing them from being able to work chorus contracts, which provide longer term, steadier employment, continues to create the scarcity of work for these people. And so it's just, and it almost makes sense if you look at it from, I'm going to keep using the word, a xenophobic lens. Of course, you don't want to give the nice long-standing contract to someone else, right? The other. Sure, maybe they can have one principal contract, but the turnover on those is usually pretty huge. So, it just furthers the way the discrimination is being done. I feel like it adds to like, oh, it totally makes sense if you look at it from that perspective, why it would happen that way. It makes it more awful, but that would be, I don't want to put reasons in other people's minds, but that's a very clear, I don't know, that makes it even kind of worse if you think about it, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, it's also amplifying classism, which has also had a long standing in our union of you're the principal. And if you're the course, you stand over there, I might learn your name. It's just, it again reinforces that idea, and it's not healthy.
I think also, and I like reading from these testimonies because they're, I think there's also this idea of like people denying things that have actually happened. And like this testimony sheet has, I don't know, 20, 30, and I'm sure this is obviously not a complete list. I'm sure there are many more stories like this. But people saying that, that their membership, they weren't even informed about the membership being frozen. So, I guess imagining I'm that person, okay, I book the show ends, I go to audition, and now I can't even go to the EPA, I can't do an ECC, the portal, I have no access. Oh, and you also can't do non-union work. And then just that not even being expressed to you. Again, also a big problem. And again, the frozen membership, but you still have to pay dues. So to me, how are you, this person isn't like choosing to do like FICOR or something. This is not a choice. And yes, it makes sense. Let's restrict people's, because then, okay, if you can't go to an EPA, obviously we know how difficult it is to even audition at an EPA if you're non-union. So yes, it makes sense from that standpoint of like, how can we further limit these people? Sure, 100%. But again, my question is, my fear is, the arguments that will be somehow used against us for this not to pass. Because I think we're all looking at this like this resolution must be passed, but it hasn't, right? And this has been going on for who knows how long. So my question is, and I don't know if any of you know the answer, but what the actual arguments have been used to keep this in place. I don't know if there's any kind of language like for unions in general in America that says something that you have to prioritize like citizens. I'm not sure if that's a thing, if there's any actual hard evidence to support this, or what the actual arguments have been, if there have been any, to keep this in the Constitution. Because I don't see any
I went on a Black Theater Matters tour. Black Theater Matters tour for the other bill. And when this was on the docket as one of the articles, I got to talk to some counselors. And again, I was like, I will keep your name confidential. Like, I won't say it, but we need to have honest conversations on what's going on. And one of the things that came up was, number one, the thing we said from the beginning, they'll take our jobs. They'll take our jobs. And right now, we don't know what's going to happen. This was the second argument. The agreement that we have with Great Britain is great. Every time we send one of our people over there, someone from over there gets to come over here. That's a fair exchange, which it sounds, hold on, electrician included. But what about the British who came to take our jobs? I know they for some reason we still have jobs, Jessica. I don't know what happened, but also what happened with Britain is that they've done this 1-for-1 exchange thing, which I think is utterly ridiculous. If we went by that 1-on-1 exchange, I wouldn't even be able to be an international artist because there are more jobs here than there are over there. It's just a ridiculous argument. So instead, we need to be very direct about like what you're trying to protect is mediocrity. Everyone's not going to be able to get into the audition room because there is so many performers. But for you to believe that someone can come overseas and take your job, my short answer is take more dance classes. Take more dance classes, because what's actually happening here, and I can speak, one of the people I spoke to was from South Africa. There was a South African play that took place. No South African actors. And they were doing Tswana, which is clicks. That entire show was run. It was not to the quality. It was disrespectful to the culture. It was completely disrespectful. And you see this also in some of the resolutions that have taken place concerning The Lion King, and how I believe there's something in there. If one of the people from South Africa leaves, another South African can't take their place. At that point, they have to be replaced by an American. So there's kind of this idea of phasing out the culture. Yeah, how do you phase out the culture? It's ridiculous.
And also, again, this seems to be very specifically, it's not like anything that is a US law. It is Equity's own proprietary, they've made this themselves. So it's not even an argument that can be like, oh, well, it's like literally this is, because also SAG has different rules from my understanding. And this does not exist to this extent with SAG. So.
Well, that's why I think it's also really important that Jessica Wu's whereas clauses for this amendment, right? Like to point out the fact that equity has touted this diversity and inclusion, right? That this completely goes against that ideal. And, even in the town hall yesterday, there was a comment from one of the attendees. I guess I'll read it without knowing that, I don't know who wrote it, but this is the text.
Can I speak on that too? Because that's the whole point. It doesn't matter who wrote it. It's the fact that someone fucking said it and that no one, myself included, really spoke up about it or said anything about it. Because it's not about, like, it's really easy to label this as, oh, that's just one person off on the sides, off on the edge, off on like their own little trip. But it's not that. It isn't even about the person who wrote it. It's about,
look at what Davon just
crazy.
said, right? Look at what Davon just said, that a counselor, one of our own counselors, had the same kind of argument. So yeah, we know that this is not, and yeah, you're right. We should treat this with the kind of impact that it really has. So I'll read this text from someone who commented this in the chat function of the town hall yesterday about allowing foreign actors to fly to the US and work during and after pandemic. Is AA going to keep them out? Perhaps quotas? Not only keep infected actors out of the US, but save the work for American actors that usually goes to casting foreigners with working visas, taking jobs away from Americans starving for work union actors. Yeah, it's a mess, an absolute mess, and a disgrace, really. I'm sad that I didn't catch it when it happened live.
And if I remember correctly, someone commented below it something of an ilk without being quite as far along, but it just reinforces, like, I don't know. I could go on so many tangents. Someone else talk.
Well, also, I would say, I'm just trying to look at the actual language of this amendment.
Jessica Wu for the win. Jessica, one emoji did it all.
Hold on. I want to look at the actual. Oh, well, basically, again, I think it's not the argument or the non-argument I think that we keep coming up against is that in Equity's own constitution says we won't discriminate based on these things. It says Equity is going to be made up of both residents and non-resident alien, which is what Jessica and others are calling to have that be removed, that language be removed from the Constitution. But even in that Constitution, it says that is who Equity should be made up of. So if you are literally not allowing those people to become Equity, then you're clearly violating your own Constitution. So I think any person with a brain could clearly read that and say this is a clear violation.
May I give another history lesson really quick?
Yes, please.
So when the Actors Equity Association first started, it was again a club for white men who were performers. And what was very interesting is as the time started to change and the protest and everything started taking place, our big strike, there were Black actors like Paul Robeson, Freddie Washington, and people of the like who wanted that same protection. And if they weren't considered a member, they didn't get the benefits of the Actors Fund. They didn't get the benefits of the Episcopal Actors Guild. They had no safety nets. And I don't know about you, but when I got hit by a truck for the first time ever, my money stuck overseas, everything else, I needed the safety net for 2 months because I was too injured to even go get my money. I couldn't do anything if it was not for that protection. Now, what these Black actors back then had to do was they had to create the Negro Actors Guild, which lasted until 1980s, the 1980s, in which then they were like, you know what? We finally got to a place to where the Actors Equity is protecting these Black actors. They have switched their roles. Because of the Negro Actors Guild, the Actors Equity Association was able to get their first Black president because of an outside force. So I think we really have to start thinking about, if it can't happen from within, what are we willing to do from the outside? Because Actors Equity has a long history of making changes when there is an outside external force.
Yeah, Yeah. And I think also I'm looking at the second resolution that is similar to Jessica's, but this is to open work borders internationally. And this is made by Anthony Marciona. Yes? Not here to.
I don't know. I should know this. I'm so terrible.
I'm going to say Marciona. So if I got it wrong, sorry to Anthony. But similar to above, the resolution essentially has the same amendment, but adds a focus on creating a more global artist economy for stage managers and stage actors, and asking, this is another thing that I think has always confused me personally, and maybe, I don't know if you guys have the answers to this, but asking our union to engage with other unions in other countries to create more opportunities for members abroad. Because I'm aware of like Canadian equity, right? And then there's an additional union in the West End, but I also know that there's obviously have been many performers that are American citizens who've gone to work in the West End and continuously do so. Are they required to then join like a union in the UK? Or how does that work? And because I feel like that happens very freely of people going to other places and performing. So I have no knowledge of foreign unions and how that works. But this whole resolution seems to be asking for there to be a little bit more of a relationship between that. So that's a question for you.
As of now, I know there were a couple of tours that went through Mexico in which they were like, I mean, you can do the show, but you got to join our union. That was it. That was literally that was the prerequisite. Join our union. And also remember, when it comes to Canada, Canada's union only exists because Actors Equity was giving them problems. They're technically a part of us. They schismed because they felt that the Actors Equity Association was being too oppressive. When you look at all the other actor unions, and even when you go to Southeast Asia and things of the like, there are groups that are willing to make it work. The people who are giving the most problem are the Actors Equity Association, which, if you really want to break it down, is a good thing. Without Actors Equity being difficult, we wouldn't have SAG. If it wasn't for Actors Equity being difficult, we wouldn't have AFTRA. Now we have SAG-AFTRA. We wouldn't have Canadian Equity. We wouldn't have UK Equity. So again, either they can get with the program and learn from history and really create those coalitions like we saw with SAG-AFTRA and IATSE when it came to the safety protocols, or they phase themselves out. If you don't evolve, we all know how this works. We know how Darwinism works.
Well, and to
go ahead. Sorry, I'm reading the resolution.
Well, to tag on to what Davon's been saying, and not to keep promoting this platform we've created, but like this is where it starts, because for many, many years, it's just been that council has done what council does, and it's been really hard to have a concerted dialogue among membership, among members. This town hall, be it what it was a huge start in members starting to hold their own union accountable. And I think a big thing we hoped in creating these videos is that we can start to get information out, and we're not just talking to anybody. Like, I'll encourage again, if anyone's listening, please comment, please ask questions. We do not want to just be talking heads. We want this to be interactive, and hopefully this only this is like a drop in the bucket of what the future can look like for us and equity, and equity, how it interacts with its members. So I think one way we can think of pressure right now is not just externally, though that's certainly a way, but also externally from members onto electeds. And I think we're learning that there's actually really power in that if we use it.
Anthony, who is the writer of this, says that there is a slight reciprocation, but more based on an exchange system that is antiquated. So it's kind of like what you were saying, that there is this kind of like exchange, like, if you send one over here, like we'll send one over there, which obviously does not work and probably is typically only for celebrities. Great. And then I also think in general, what I was with the convention, and this is kind of off topic, but also on topic. So thank you for this platform, because I also think it's funny that, not funny, it's horrible, but it's just comical to me that equity is like, great, we'll create this convention, there will be delegates. But the whole idea is that the delegate can somewhat represent, the members, right? But if the delegates do not get or are discouraged from interaction with members, discouraged from presenting the resolutions that are being voted on to the members, how could the delegates possibly be representatives for the members if they don't even get to communicate with the members? And then not only not, give any formal channel of communication, but actually discouraged from sharing what's going on at the convention with members. To me, that's completely backwards. So thank you for doing this. And also just even sharing your resolutions, because otherwise it's like, what? And it's like, great. Obviously delegates are also members and their opinion matters as well, but let's not pretend it's any kind of representation if members literally aren't even privy to what's going on. So to me, it's like, that's not, the same way that the town hall wasn't a town hall, how could you have delegates when there's no communication? So I want to personally thank you all for communicating with members and trying to communicate with members. And I also think that the issue is a lot of members, like for me, I had never heard of any of these additional requirements and limitations that equity was creating until yesterday. And I would imagine that is the case for plenty of members, unless it has personally affected them or someone that they know. I would imagine most people do not know about this. And if they did know, I'm sure that they would be enraged about it as well. And so I think my question too, and this kind of goes back to like the bylaws constitution thing, if there is a part of this that cannot be changed or that has to be you're advising counsel, what are the next steps, if any? What can members do, if anything? And I think the answer may be nothing, but what can members do to help push that along, if anything?
Well, I was thinking about this a lot last night, actually, because I've been on this whole idea of like, it was actually one of my only questions in the town hall yesterday that didn't get answered, unfortunately, but like, how do the members hold our governance leaders and our staff accountable? And the answer that I've always received has been, for governance, elections. For staff, it's not. I guess we can't personally hold them accountable because that is they follow the rule of council, right? So it's tricky because, yeah, you can make that argument and say, oh, well, if more people participated in elections, then maybe they feel like their voices were more heard. But at the same time, we don't know anything about these people when they run. Nobody knew anything about me when I was running. Essentially, it was a popularity contest, and that doesn't do anything for anyone. That just feeds ego. But this has to be about who actually wants to make change in the union and what it was. And back then I didn't even know what exactly I wanted to do. I just knew that I wasn't happy with the way things were going, and I wanted to be a voice in the room. So I think it's important that we have this transparency, and going back to accountability, I think that what members can do is get involved. And I know that that's so vague, and it's told to members so many times, like, join a committee, send an email, do more than that. Like, just like be a part of these kind of conversations. Listen to your delegates, because I guarantee you most of the delegates are trying to open the lines of communication in so many different ways. There are so many different versions of this kind of conversation happening in different rooms. And I think that it is important for delegates to be open about where they stand on certain issues and how they vote at convention. I think we have every responsibility to the members to be transparent about that, so that they can then have the faith in us if they choose to elect us again in the future, if we choose to run again.
I would even piggyback on that and say Jennifer Lopez told us this forever ago. Let's get loud. Like, she even said it's part of an inauguration mashup now. Let's get loud. Like, I love that Kim Morgan-Dean was just brought up across the screen, because she's the perfect example of this in the Barter Theater. When Tim Hughes wrote his letter, I had the blessing of getting mixed up with him and then meeting and speaking with all these theaters in all the regions of what's going on. And what we started realizing is, wait a minute, all these stories are the same. And what's getting really interesting is everyone's afraid to mess up their relationship with Actors Equity, so they think they're the only ones. And the moment these theaters started talking to each other and realizing, as soon as these members started talking to each other and realizing that it's the same playbook, Kim Morgan-Dean and the Barter Theater were the best example of it. They got loud. They had a meeting. They had receipts dating back to, I think the first person they had a contact with was Sid Solomon when he was in office. Literally when Sid Solomon was in office, got voted out of office, reelected. And so like literally a whole life happened with Sid Solomon before they got dealt with. And the only reason they got dealt with is because they met with Kate. They showed her the receipts. And then she said, I'd look into it. Next day, approved. That's what it is. So I encourage anyone, if there's ever a problem, to get loud. There is context for this. There is a reason that you should. And this even goes for the delegates. If Ryan Morales Green did not organize us, if we all didn't start getting together, if we all didn't take the time to start pushing and doing what we needed to do, we wouldn't even have half these resolutions. And if we did, they would be so flawed because we did not get that information, because we were not expected to educate ourselves. We were expected to sit there, listen to some propaganda, and vote the way they want us to vote. And that's not good. We have a gang issue, and we gotta deal with the gangs, break up the gangs, get the thugs out, and make this union more about us, making this a more equitable space for everyone else. And anyone, if you're getting bullied, if you are getting bullied because you are an immigrant and you want to be represented, if you are an actor and you're dealing with discrimination, if you're an actor and you feel like you're not being seen, or you're a theater, get loud and call them by their name. Don't protect the enemy. Don't protect the person that's looking to oppress you. Get loud.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's been actually some like light at the end of the tunnel type things that have happened lately, like the Equity Weekly, the fact that the town hall actually got moved up and that they did actually leave time for questions. And, you know, it's all flawed. It's all not what exactly we want. But I will say that like we've now been delegates for 7 or 8 months, and we've been loud from pretty much go. And not everything that we've asked for we've gotten, but we've gotten some of it. And so I think, I know for me, I want to quit every other day, and because sometimes it just doesn't feel worth it. But change does actually happen, albeit way slower than we want it to. And so something I would make a personal request of, like, check in on your delegates, support your delegates, especially the ones that, you know, like Robert and Davon have done so much amazing work, and I like love them both so much as my fellow delegate, you know, brother. I don't know what word to say. People. You can't tell I'm tired. I'm a little tired. And whatever you can do to not just support us and like help us do stuff, but talk to us, because we're all in this position and we've stayed engaged in this position because of members, because we're learning from members, because we've got Gabrielle on this call challenging us, asking us questions, engaging with us, because there's people in the comments who are letting us know what they need and what they want. And like, that's actually like a huge part of our lifeblood. We get excited not because we have an ego or we want to do what we want to do, but because we have so many experiences where we actually get to feel like, oh my God, I put all this work into this and it was actually of service to other people. Oh my fucking God, like that actually happened, because the time in between feels so long and arduous sometimes. And we come up against so much resistance. So I don't know, what I'm just trying to say is like anything you can do to be loud on each other's behalves, right? To elevate each other's needs, to elevate not just the delegates, but other members' questions and concerns and all of the stuff. Like the more you can do that, I think the what is it? You go fast alone, go far together. You know, I think we can go farther and we can be resilient when we have each other. And so anything you can do to get someone else's back, you know, it's like if anyone's at improv, before you go on stage, you could touch each other's back and you go, I got your back, I got your back, I got your back. No matter what happens out there, no matter if this crashes and burns, I got your back. And that's like what I feel like I need and I want to provide as well.
Ryan, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. So sorry. I have to make a run for it, y'all. I have to go give a statement. But yeah, appreciate you all. Take care, okay?
Bye, D.
Bye.
Yeah, I think a good way to kind of end too is I'm reading Jessica's comment about after a meeting with Mary McCall. But I think what is interesting too in the kind of supplementary materials that Jessica provided was that after her personal experience of dealing with equity and having staff members basically say, you know, legal things that actually weren't legal, and that people were then, going to her, that she was the person that people were coming to, which is great, but like that shouldn't be, Jessica shouldn't have to be like the only person fighting for actors that are, being told things that are just straight up incorrect, that are being threatened by, and who don't know or are just assuming that what they're being told is true. And that shouldn't have to be the case. And so I think, yes, I think if people totally understand being scared and not wanting to because you're being told something, but also at the same time, it's like, if people knew that this was going on, I know that there's tons of people who would have, supported that and said, this is not okay. And I think if anything, even just with the town hall, like if it takes an article in the New York Times to make something happen, great. Then like, guess we need more articles in the New York Times. You know what I mean? So like, I think with any issue, with any of the resolutions, like, I think people just have to, you have to, be able to use your voice. And even if you're not like, you don't have to have like a name to say something. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to have Broadway credits to say something. Like I don't have any Broadway credits. I would like some, but you don't need that. You know what I mean? To speak up and say something. You don't have to, whatever, because of everybody. Because also we can't rely on those people because not every single person, specifically with surrounding some certain issues right now, surrounding a very specific person, people aren't speaking up. They're not saying anything. And it's very clear why. It's like, yeah, this person's cutting you a paycheck, so whatever. But you can't rely on people who like maybe don't have, like, you can rely on the people who like are working in regional theater and are working on productions for this person to be the only people to speak up, because really that's not going to do so. We need everybody, I think, to use.
That's a good segue, actually. So anyone watching who's interested in being a part of these conversations as a moderator, like Gabrielle did today, please email us, DM us, find us, and let us know. Let the Transparency Coalition know, and we will figure out a way to get you involved, because we would love to continue to have more and more of our rank and file members involved in this discussion.
Mm-hmm. And we'll be doing these every day until the day before the convention, April 24th, right? Every single day. We got this going. Tomorrow, we're talking specifically about liaison area concerns, some resolutions that deal specifically with a lot of the areas outside of New York City that have been brought forward by our amazing killer liaison delegates and regional delegates outside the city. So please tune in for that. It is at, I have the time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Pacific time. So please join us then.
Thank you for having me today. Very happy to, I'm always happy to talk. But no, and I think it's important. And I hope other people will say, yeah, I want to do it, because I also feel very much that like, you can't complain about things if you don't at least try. If you don't vote, if you can, then you can't complain. And even like the thing that we like, I think it was such a low number of members actually voted, which, that again, and then people, were complaining about things, but didn't actually vote. So if you're someone watching who's a member, please volunteer to moderate if you've got some things you want to say, and hopefully more things will get done. So thank you for all of your work. And yeah, I think if there's anything that members can do to support you, you should let us know.
Will do.
100%. Thanks, Gabrielle. Thanks, everybody.
You.